The Houthis escalate attacks against shipping and threatened to expand operations into the Mediterranean Sea. Heavy torrential rains and flooding hit Al Mahra province and caused serious damage. The United Nations officials warn that famine in the northern Gaza is already full-blown. Good evening, welcome to Yemen Today News. I am Abir Ali. Massam project revealed that the Houthi militia pushed their pre-trapped fishing boats towards Bab el-Mandab Strait. The Director General of the Massam project said that the field teams, in cooperation with the Yemeni National Mine Action Program, removed large explosive devices that were on the coast of Bab el-Mandab. Massam director pointed out that the huge explosive device consisted of 25 kilograms of highly explosive, in addition to 25 barrels of gasoline, each with a capacity of 20 liters. Houthis escalate threats against the shipping by launching the fourth stage. This came during remarks by the Houthi military spokesperson yesterday during a pro-Palestinian rally in the capital Sana'a. This report has more details.
A Houthi leader called for a further escalation of shipping strikes, citing a likely attack on Rafah and growing Western pressure on Hamas to accept the terms of a planned ceasefire. The claims were made at their weekly Friday demonstrations in Sana'a, following a week of intensified attacks on American warships and commercial vessels. Houthis have proclaimed the start of the fourth stage of escalation, a Houthi official stated in a televised speech and on social media. He stated that it was effective immediately as of the moment of this statement. In addition, according to the statement, they are targeting all ships that violate the ban on Israeli navigation and are traveling to Israeli ports in the Mediterranean. They pledged to strike any reachable area within their range, which some media sources interpret as a threat to ships in the eastern Mediterranean. Bloomberg reports that this would necessitate a range of about 1,200 miles, but it comes only days after a Houthi drone appeared to strike the MSC Orion in the Indian Ocean, 300 to 400 nautical miles south of Yemen. The Houthis also vowed to target all ships and companies related to supplying and entering Israeli ports of any nationality if a military campaign is started against Rafah in southern Gaza. The U.S. Central Command and the Aspides mission have both verified that the strikes have resumed. CENTCOM confirmed dowing attacks this week, including 3 aerial drones on May 2nd and a surface drone on April 30. According to Aspides, the Italian ship, which recently took the duty of flagship after relieving another Italian warship, shot down multiple attacks on a cargo ship on April 29. Maersk CEO told investors Wednesday that he expects security concerns in the Red Sea to last several months, and he stated that Maersk had no plans to return to the Red Sea area and speculated that the diversions could last until 2025.
The European Union will host a high-level meeting of senior officials on Yemen to assess the humanitarian situation in the country. The director of Neighborhood and Middle East Operations said that the meeting of senior humanitarian officials regarding Yemen will take place on May 7th at the Belgian capital, Brussels. The European official added that the meeting will be held by the European Union Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Department in cooperation with the Swedish government. 2 people were killed and others injured in tribal clashes in Amran Governorate. According to sources, the clashes in which light and medium weapons were used broke out over disputed lands between the 2 tribes. Military sources in Dala Governorate said a cautious calm during this week has prevailed the situation in military fronts. The government forces reported that clashes from time to time with the Houthi militia on several fronts. During the past weeks, the Houthi militia suffered heavy losses at the hands of members of the joint forces. Several areas in Al-Mahra governorate are witnessing heavy rains and torrential rains. A source in the local authority reported that heavy thunderstorms hit the center of the governorate along with sweeping torrents. The source added that the floods caused the demolition of old homes and damaged others, cutting off roads and isolating areas from each other, as well as sweeping away cars.
The local authorities responded to our calls quickly. However, we face a lot of difficulties in the streets and a lot of citizens affected by these issues. Many people were affected by this disaster, including car drivers and homeowners, due to the destruction of infrastructure. We need at least a week to get rid of these remnants.
Government officials have criticized the performance of relief organizations such as the UN, who has confirmed that 30% of displacement camps in Yemen are at risk of flooding. This report has more.
The UN confirmed that 30% of displacement camps in Yemen are at risk of flooding, adding that displacement in Yemen arises from both conflict and disasters triggered by natural hazards. Meanwhile, a government official criticized the performance of relief organizations, stating that they continue to lament the situation on the ground instead of developing tangible long-term solutions. The head of the government unit in charge of overseeing the camps for internally displaced people in Yemen, Najib As-Saadi, expressed regret over the risks posed by torrential rains. He noted that the crisis should have already been tackled head-on with effective solutions and alternatives many years ago. He noted that the organization's flaws stem from the fact that they work in place of the state, and he demanded that state institutions take the lead in addressing displacement and subsequent issues, providing technical support and capacity building to government agencies so that they can respond to the humanitarian crisis. Al-Saadi recalled that many camps were randomly established by the displaced themselves, especially prior to 2019, which is why they were built on flood channels. The Camp Management and Coordination Group, the International Organization for Migration, and the REACH Initiative reported in a joint report on the risk of floods to displaced person sites in Yemen that 672 sites host a total of 747,100 displaced people in 17 governorates with a critical or high degree of exposure to the risk of floods during 2024. The report confirmed that the IDP sites exposed to high risks of flood during this year represent 30% of the total number of 2,285 displacement sites, which is an increase of 5% compared to last year.
The Director General of the World Health Organization warned that an Israeli military attack on the city of Rafah could lead to a bloodbath. The World Health Organization is concerned that a large-scale military operation in Rafah in Gaza may lead to a bloodbath and further weaken an already broken health system. European countries, the United Nations and the United States urged Netanyahu to abandon the idea of a ground attack on the city. The Egyptian security delegation mediating the negotiation of Gaza reached a consensus formula on many points of disagreement. Local sources said that the Hamas delegation arrived in Egypt and that there was noticeable progress in the negotiations. Earlier, an informed Arab source expressed its hope that more final touches would be put on the deal, noting that it would be in at least 3 stages. After more than 7 months of Israeli assault and significant limitations on food delivery to the Palestinian enclave, a top UN official declared Friday that hard-hit northern Gaza was now a full-blown famine. This report has more.
A top UN official said Friday that hard-hit northern Gaza was now in full-blown famine, after more than 6 months of Israeli aggression and severe restrictions on food deliveries to the Palestinian territory. The U.S. director of the UN World Food Program is now the most prominent international official so far to declare that trapped civilians in the most cut-off part of Gaza had gone over the brink into famine, which was now moving south. The director said a ceasefire and a greatly increased flow of aid through land and sea routes was essential to confronting the growing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, home to 2.3 million people. Since March, northern Gaza had not received anything like the aid needed to stave off famine. The U.S. aid official said on-the-ground preparations for a new U.S.-led sea route were on track to bring in more food, including treatment for hundreds of thousands of starving children by early or mid-May. Despite the PR, the United States is still continuing to provide Israel with billions of dollars in military aid. In Gaza, the nutritional treatment for starving children is most urgently needed in the northern part of the Palestinian territory. Civilians have been cut off from most aid supplies, bombarded by Israeli airstrikes, and driven into hiding by fighting. Acute malnutrition rates among children under 5 have surged from 1% before the war to 30% 5 months later, the fastest such climb in hunger in recent history, more than in grave conflicts and food shortages in Somalia or South Sudan. One of the few medical facilities still operating in northern Gaza is besieged by parents bringing in thousands of children with malnutrition for treatment. Aid officials believe many more starving children remain unseen and in need, with families unable to bring them through fighting and checkpoints for care.
Coming up in the news. Yemeni handicraftsmen continue to struggle amid the conflict.
As you can see today, this is one of our classes where we are having children aged starting from 9, 10, who have not been enrolled in the formal education, but in countries like Yemen, that has been suffering from a protracted conflict since 2014, more families and children are internally displaced. As these children and families move from one location to another, their access to education is interrupted. Even when families are prioritizing their children's education, schools in the host communities might find it very hard to accommodate the increased number of children who are coming and want to go back to school. And the result is more children are out of school across the country. UNICEF, in collaboration with its partners and with support from ECHO, is providing these families, children and communities with a second chance to education through its accelerated emergency learning programs, as we have been working with families, communities and children to increase their awareness of the importance of education. We have been seeing more children coming to our classes every single day.
Welcome back. The humanitarian situation in Yemen remains difficult, with more than half of the population facing food insecurity. Yemen, which has been affected by the ongoing civil war, is facing a halt in oil exports, according to a report published by the International Monetary Fund. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization said that global food prices rose for the second month in a row in April. The organization indicated that this is the first time that prices have risen in 2 consecutive months in more than 2 years. The FAO said that the noticeable increase in meat prices as well as slight increases in the prices of the cereal and vegetable oils were offset by large declines in the prices of dairy products and sugar. The Houthi militia has continued to kidnap a journalist child for about 10 months due to his views criticizing their violations. Journalist Mohammed Abdullah al-Qadiri, liberated from the prisons of the Houthi militia, demanded the release of his 7-year-old child, who was forcibly hidden without knowing his whereabouts or communicating with him. Al-Qadiri said that the militia did this as a means of pressure to push him to move from Aden to Eb after they kidnapped him twice and practiced the most horrific torture against him. Yemen ranked among the lagging countries at the bottom of the list of the Arab and International Press Freedom. Yemen ranked 154th, which is a better indicator compared to the previous year, in which it ranked 164th, while Somalia ranked 145th globally. According to the report, Mauritania ranked 33rd globally, advancing 53 points on the index compared to last year, when it was ranked 86th and is currently first in the Arab world and Africa. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization warned of the proliferation of desert locust swarms in the eastern Yemeni governorate. The organization expected a massive spread of locusts during the next 2 months in the eastern Yemen governorates, and also warned of the danger of hurricanes along with Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea. The organization said that the interior area between the governorates of Hadramaut, Shabwa and Al Jawf will witness a proliferation of desert locusts during the next 2 months. Yemeni craftsmen face the cruelty of war, which makes it difficult to make a living. This report has more details.
Craftsmen in Yemen face many challenges in light of the deteriorating economic and living conditions, the interruption of roads, and the scarcity of raw materials due to years of war. Many of them are now struggling to maintain their only source of livelihood, which is traditional crafts and handicrafts. Every morning, Haj Abdullah al-Haddad goes to his shop in one of the markets in the city of Ma'rib. Haj Abdullah works from 4 days to a week, and he makes the Yemeni jambiya.
I have been working for about 40 years. I make jambiyas and knives.
On the other side, there is a carpenter who is famous for making sculptures and artifacts out of wood. However, he also faces many challenges due to years of war.
I fix plates, spoons, and the grind coffee instrument.
The years of the war in Yemen has led to the deterioration in the economic situation in the country. Also, the Houthis interrupted the payment of salaries, which doubled the suffering of the people.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The Houthis escalate attacks against shipping and threaten to expand operations into the Mediterranean Sea. Heavy torrential rains and flooding hit Al-Mahra province and caused serious damage. The United Nations officials warn that famine in the northern Gaza is already full-blown. This is the end of the news. Thank you for streaming with us. It was Abir Ali.